So we've been appreciating the Bardo over this Ango period, and I want to spend my talk today with some more appreciation of this Bardo. The Bardo, most of you have touched into the talks over the last few weeks since we started Ango about 5 weeks ago, perhaps it was. For the benefit of those who haven't, the Bardo is understood as the in-between period that's in between two states. So in traditional Tibetan Buddhism, which is where the word Bardo comes from, it's understood as this realm in between when a person dies and then they're in some sort of afterlife realm and then they're reborn at some point later. So we're not really going into the metaphysics of all of that. We're actually looking at actually a deeper and more present understanding of Bardo, which is present for all of us right now in our everyday lives, in our moment experience, which is how we experience life as in between. You could say it's always in between. It's never fully fixed as one thing or another. So there's something in the way in which our human minds just handle the basic flux and flow of human experience, that it seems we can't or don't always completely unselfconsciously embody that flow and flux. There's always some sort of fixity that we're imposing upon ourselves. I am this. I am the center of this life. And that self-consciousness, if you will, certainly self-centeredness, affects the way we see the world. So it conditions our experience of time and space, and it conditions our experience of other people and other beings, namely as separate in space. So all of that is based on a fixity that doesn't ultimately exist at the lowest level. And yet, it does exist at some level. We are separate beings. We do have separate states. I can be happy, really happy, and then the next day I can be really sad. And those feel like very different experiences. But it's a limited experience. So our understanding of awakenedness, awakened consciousness, is to have all of it present at the same time, to not lose contact with the whole enchilada, really to recognize our unity. And this also encompasses or entails a different experience of time and space when we open ourselves in this way. So the Bardo, being our human life, we could say, is the ground and is the opportunity for us to wake up to our true nature by investigating exactly what's happening in this moment. Right, so it's very much Zen. It's just really paying attention to what's going on and asking, who am I? What's going on right now? What is this? And Bardo is one way to kind of frame it. So this talk is going to be, I want to be a bit impressionistic here. I don't really have an argument or a through line or even necessarily a beginning or a conclusion. Yeah, I've been reading Trungpa's kind of definitive work on the Bardos, which is called Transcending Madness. It's quite a dense work, and I have to say I resonate with some of it. I don't resonate with some of it. He's such a genius, and he's looked at the human nature in such incredible richness and detail and depth that it's some of it's beyond me, beyond my experience. He's so amazing, and some of it, perhaps the language just doesn't resonate for me. But some of it does, and so I'm gonna intersperse some quotes from his book, into this, and I want to do this in kind of an impressionistic way, just to offer something to bring out an appreciation of the richness of this Bardo territory and how we can work with it with our practice. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know, those of you who were here last week and listened to Myoshin's talk, or might have heard it online. I think we just published it online yesterday, but I got a chance to listen to it, and I wanted to say I liked it quite a bit. I liked how he connected the story of Mr. Sai and Mr. Sai's horse with the Bardo. And I thought that was quite helpful to see that, the way that, correct me if I'm misstating your, your understanding, but how Mr. Sai was able to really see the horse as opposed to just looking at it in a normal way, the way his neighbors were. That normal way being a more transactional way, and a more way that involved, certain good states and bad states, and good luck and bad luck, and the horse being present and the horse being gone. To have these be very clear, say, state conditions with very clear value or demerits to them, right? But instead, Mr. Sai was in a place where he was able to see that, no, all of that's just, in a sense, arbitrary, and it's certainly preferential. It's based on my preferences of what's good and what's bad. I love Myoshin's statement that, Mr. Sai's experience of the horse wasn't the same as his neighbor's experience of the horse, and neither of them were certainly the horse's experience of the horse. The horse has nothing, to know of good luck and bad luck or anything like this. And so that's what we really are invited to open up to in our lives, is an experience of our lives that isn't definitively fixed by our opinions and our desires, right? To say it's this way or that way, it's so limiting and so constricting. It's these ideas we have about things, even to say that something's happening, or to say that something is ending and something is beginning, is actually as much our idea as anything else. We have an idea that, to take it all the way to the great matter, we have an idea, when this body dies, it's the end of us. Well, we don't know that. It's just an idea. Right? But we're quite sure that, life ends at death, if you will, that life and death are opposites, are opposed to each other. But see, the Bardo experience, being in between those two things, even in between life and death, is also the space of continuity in between. It's what connects them. It's what verifies that there is something that persists. And yet we have beginnings and endings, life and death. There's a funny exchange that he captures in the book. He reiterates that Bardo means, bar means the middle and do means the island. So together, Bardo means that which exists between two situations. It's the island in the middle of the river, with the two shores being the two situations. And then he says it's like the experience of living. So it's between birth and death. So this is the Bardo, between birth and death. Our whole life is the Bardo. And then a student asked him, well, what's not the Bardo? Which is right. This is a question that might have come up over the last few weeks. And he laughs and he says, the beginning and the end. And everybody laughed. Okay. So birth, if you understand it as the beginning, then that's like not in the Bardo. But if you understand it as a continuity, then it's part of the Bardo. Both are true. So here's a statement that resonated with me. The whole point I'm trying to make, Trungpa says, is that Bardo experience is a peak experience. When you really experience Bardo as Bardo, not in the way that we normally experience our lives, in these fixed ways. Bardo experience is a peak experience where you're not quite certain whether you have completely gone mad or you are just about to receive something. Trungpa talks a lot in terms of madness and craziness and insanity, those things, and how those are, we can really understand them as awakeness and delusion, I think, in my understanding. They're kind of isomorphic. So where you're not, the peak Bardo experience is where you're not quite certain whether you have completely gone mad or you are just about to receive something. That particular peak point is the Bardo experience. And the Bardo experience can't be resolved unless there is training. Without lifelong training in the practice of meditation and in accordance with the practice of meditation, putting the skillful actions of the Bodhisattva into practice, you can't have a complete Bardo experience. This was powerful for me, and it resonated with me very much, because there's something so non-normative, so disorienting, so unstable in terms of the stability that we seek about these peak Bardo experiences, that it's very difficult to hold them together in consciousness. Our egoic consciousness is very committed to fixing things and to keeping firm our individuality and separateness. And it's also our desires that pull us into one place or another, because we tend to have a preference for one shore or the other. Right? So it's unstable, it's undefined. We tend to prefer a state on one shore or the other. And the fundamental flux is disoriented and even scary. So all of these things kind of make it difficult to stay in the Bardo. But meditation practice, Zazen, is just that. Being within that place, in the now, which we really do experience as a mixed state. It's a mixed state. Zen is all about gray areas, but not the gray that's just, it's all washed of color. It's not that. It's a really vivid in-between zone. You could say it's like the full spectrum of the rainbow. It's like all the colors in that tanka up there. That's what it is too, that mixture of everything. It's a really disorienting to experience this, you could say, emptiness of fixity, when we so much want to and are constantly striving to fix things. He says, it's like trying to pin up a poster to paste it on the wall. Okay, here it is. Here's my view. Here's reality right here. But somehow the wall doesn't exist and the poster doesn't exist. It shifts all the time. You can't fix it. Okay, we're constantly trying to apply emptiness to create our world. So there's a continuity here when we're able to kind of ride the waves, if you will, or really to experience the emptiness, the insubstantiality, and the mixedness of all of our states. Then we can be continuous in that awareness. So he says, Bardo experiences aren't transformations of your life. And we can, like, the initial thinking is that, okay, that Bardo experience in between death and life, it's a transformation from one life to another. No, they're actually not transformations of your life, they're continuity. It's counterintuitive in a way, but that's the way we need to look at it. And that continuity takes the shape both of highlights and of ordinary situations as well. That's important because we think, oh yeah, this is the Bardo right here. And now I'm going to move on to the next thing. No, it's both the high points, the low points, the in-between points. It's every point. Okay, we can't make one experience any higher or better or more meaningful than another. As soon as we do that and we raise one above the other, now we're doing some sort of disservice or fracturing inside of that fundamental unity. I'm appreciating how we can get a sense of the qualities of a Bardo experience. Now, some of you have done, deeper and longer meditation retreats. You've experienced this mind that we cultivate where form and emptiness are coexistent. We can experience that. The relative and the absolute are right here, present at the same time. They're the same thing. They're not separate. Time and space takes on a very different kind of feel, where the past is past, but it's also present. We experience other beings as being separate, but also being one with us. Okay. This both and experience is familiar to those of us who have done, deep meditation. It's both and. And Trungpa is quite, assertive about this. So the possibility of two experiences coming at the same time, both confused and awake at the same time. In fact, that seems to be the whole idea of Bardo, altogether being in a no man's land, experiencing both at the same time. I hope there's an invitation in here and an appreciation to actually, seek in a way. I don't want to say seek, that's not the right, we don't want that energy. But to invite into your own experience and into your own meditative awareness a both and mixed place. So again, Trungpa, there's the possibility of absolute sanity, and there's also the possibility of complete madness. That is being experienced simultaneously in one situation, 1 second, one moment, together simultaneously. That seems to be the highlight of Bardo experience. Of course, we're not supposed to make highlights, or at least he didn't say don't make highlights. He said that the continuity goes through highlights and ordinary. So I'm corrected. So that seems to be the highlight. Let's say the essence of the Bardo experience, because Bardo is in between the two experiences and is continuous with them, so it includes them. Complete madness and complete sanity at the same time. Is this familiar to anyone? I am curious. Is there some? Yeah, yes, access to this. Yeah. Looking online as well. Yeah, some hands raised. Okay, some slight nods. When we reach the peak point, it's as though we're experiencing both hot and cold water at the same time. This very faint line between sanity and insanity is a very profound teaching in regard to the experience of Bardo and Buddhist teachings in general. The subtleties of awakeness are exactly the same as the subtleties of confusion. In the Genjo Koan, Dogen talks about awakeness and delusion in just this way. The way I've described it, or the way I see it, is it's kind of like one of those magic eye paintings Do you remember those? They were popular a while back, where it looks like just a sort of a kaleidoscope or impressionistic kind of thing. But then if you shift your perception in a certain way, suddenly a three-dimensional shape emerges. Okay, so it's kind of delusion and enlightenment can kind of be seen in that way. Samsara and nirvana are two sides of the same coin. They occur together in one situation simultaneously. I would add and say they're two sides of a coin that's spinning. So there's a coherent, there's a reality that's created out of those two sides, where you can't even necessarily distinguish them from each other. So such Bardo experiences happen all the time with us. We don't have to have a peak experience or dramatic experience. In ordinary, everyday situations as well, we're not quite certain whether we are learning something or whether we are missing something. There's that particular point of doubt. If you're more paranoid, you'll think you're missing something. If you're more confident, you'll think you're learning something. But there's also the awareness of the learning and missing qualities occurring simultaneously in experiences all the time. This experience is very common and very obvious. Yeah. He talks a lot about paranoia and metanoia, or confidence, which I think might be kind of a product of the 70s. Paranoia was a big thing in the 70s. But I don't know. I don't necessarily feel paranoid that much. I don't know if anybody else does. But that language doesn't resonate with me so much, paranoia and confidence. But I would say maybe, confusion or even fear. You can see that, fear versus connectedness or confidence. Right? So to have the aliveness of those two states sort of present at the same time, and to be aware that this bothness, this both-andness, is a quality of awakeness. This is a quality of awakeness. It isn't that supreme clarity or the supreme confidence, like the good sides of these things. No, it's the bothness that is the quality of awakeness. You can even say joy and sorrow, emotional states apply here as well. To hold joy and sorrow together, clarity and confusion. This is the quality of awakeness. I'll end with this one, which I think is pretty direct. We would like to be individuals who are continuously existing, continuously surviving, continuously being one person, not even making the journey through space and time. That egoic consciousness. This wants to fix ourselves as beings and doesn't want to acknowledge ourselves as the flow itself, but instead wants to be fixed and isolate and solid. So time and space might be extra attributes, but the actual basic phenomenon of our consciousness of being has to be a solid thing. That's how ego tends to see it. And we see ourselves this way, right? It's like I'm a being and I have an experience of time and I have an experience of space. There's a drive, a self-centeredness that leads us to experience ourselves this way. But that's not the awakened view of our being. Time and space are intrinsic to our being, you could say. They're not separate attributes of the world that we happen to inhabit. And when we experience them as in their fullness and in their reality, then we see ourselves in our true nature as that flux and flow. Yeah, so how do we experience it? It's the meditation. So we turn our awareness inside and we study the self. We just watch and witness the rising and falling of phenomena within this being. Don't get in the way of it. Don't try to manipulate it. Don't try to analyze it. Just be it. Yeah. Dharma gates are inexhaustible. I vow to experience them. It's our third bodhisattva vow. Yeah. Inexhaustible. And just experience this and this and this and this and this. And then the richness of this Bardo, really unfolds for us. And then we find awakening happening in the midst of that. We don't do it. Awakeness awakens. Yeah, okay. I hope I haven't said too much. I said something inspiring and encouraging. Thank you for your time.